And we're live.
We're live.
Hello.
Hello.
La, la, la. Hello, all. Welcome. It is Monday afternoon, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and we've got a lot of interesting guests lined up, don't we?
Yes, we do. We have a lot of interesting guests lined up. Just some of our guests are on a different time zone than us.
That's okay. We know that these things happen from time to time, so you're going to have to put up with us for a little while before our esteemed guests, Jesse and Tyrel Ventura.
He's an hour behind us, so we're going to have to sort of be holding space for a while. So, you know, if you guys are really here to see Jesse, you might want to come back.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you don't want to really see us. I mean, who the hell are we, right?
We have some stuff to talk about. I mean, there's no shortage.
No, we definitely have a lot of things that we want to talk about, but of course, the most important thing, look, we've got a lot to address today. We've obviously got to address Bernie. This is really unfortunate. This is the, you know, you don't think that Senator Sanders could sink to a new low, but unfortunately he did. And now everyone is basically done with him. Here's all, I don't even want to get into it yet because it's going to require a lot. But what I think is of most importance is, what did you do this weekend, Jen?
Yeah, so guys, I don't know like if anyone on here follows us on social media or whatever, so what people know, but I went to the march on Saturday in DC, the Free Palestine March. And it was amazing. I've never seen anything like that before in my whole life, that they're estimating 300,000 people or so.
Yeah, and even if it's off by 10,000, big deal.
No, because when we were in it, and I have some pictures, we could put up my little slide presentation if you want to. So when we were in it, it was really difficult to see how big. I mean, we knew we were in a huge crowd, but you can't see. I kept thinking, I wish I had a drone. I wish I had a drone to be like watching it. But and now seeing the picture, and I have a couple of overhead shots that are not courtesy of me. The first pictures are mine, and then there's some overheads. But it was amazing. And for anyone who has like thoughts about what those rallies look like or what the people are like or what they're chanting, I was there before it started. I was there pretty much for like, I'd say 4 hours. I mean, at least like it went into the night, and then everybody was sort of still just like mulling around the White House, and it was really crowded. I did not see one act of anything belligerent or angry or violence or conflict, nothing, not at all, not the whole day, not with the people, not with the police. The police were there in a capacity actually to protect the protesters from traffic. And that was basically it. The police presence was literally just around the perimeter to block off the streets. There was no anything negative that happened. So it's like when people say that people are chanting death to Jews, not an ounce of anti-Semitism. There were tons of Jews there. all dispersed amongst the crowd, because this wasn't a JVP or a Jewish event, but it was very, harmonious. It was. There was not a single problem.
I think the other thing you have to remember that was so interesting about this event is you did get there early, and you were there when it was probably, 10, 20,000 people.
I was there when it was a couple hundred people.
Yeah. So this thing just kind of ballooned. It became this sort of avalanche of people that just ended up showing up.
Well, no, there were a ton of people that came from all across the country.
Sure.
There were a ton of people. There were buses. People got bussed in. Code Pink had buses coming from different locations. So a lot of organizations had buses coming in, but it was huge. And huge. And the racial diversity, the socioeconomic diversity, the age diversity, really, it was across the board. It was across the board. And yes, there were a lot of Palestinian people there. And what I've come to learn from my friend who I was with, and it's really interesting because I never really thought of this, but for so many years, there have always been these Palestinians living among us, but they're living among us. But a lot of times, historically, with the way prejudices and bigotry has been in this country, I have come to realize that many of those people would say they were from Jordan or Lebanon, so as to not provoke any sort of reaction or confrontation. And so there are a ton of people that we have always thought of as Jordanian and Lebanese. And yes, there are also Jordanian and Lebanese people, but I didn't realize there was this huge amount of population that were scared to say who they were. It makes sense. Yes. It totally makes sense, but I didn't put it together at the time. But so, oh my God, it was amazing. It was amazing. Do you want to see my pictures?
We would like to see your pictures.
You can add my pictures. So yeah, take the banner off. I specifically took pictures that I just thought were kind of cool. I could have taken hundreds of pictures, if not for the fact that my phone was about to die. And I was so smart because I brought the battery, but I didn't bring the cord. So I was walking around with the battery, holding it really close to my phone, hoping it would work. Genocide Joe was a big thing. That was a very common chant. It was or something like something Genocide Joe.
Hey, ho, ho, Genocide Joe has got to go.
Right. Like they're not with that. And then this picture right here was really fun because the lady in the yellow shirt, there's a series of these. And I think I sent you the one where I was cracking up because she overheard me saying, I want to get a flag in the background. And she literally came running over and was like waving the flag. And it was like on my head. It was so hilarious.
The thing that makes this photo so unique, if you guys are looking, is the fact that it isn't just Jen with Jews for Palestine and U.S. aid to Israel with the Palestinian flags. You do have the American flag in the background.
It's interesting.
It's very symbolic in many ways.
Well, that this happened there.
Well, because the truth is, if this was the United States of America in the vision of the people of the United States of America, the American flag would be interwoven with the Palestinian flag, not the Israeli flag. And so what we've come to understand is so many of the old tropes that we've been learning about that are not true are now starting again. This is a new world that's trying to be born right now. And the old guard is doing everything in their capacity to ensure that that does not change. And there is a lot of money, even though it is almost like a super minority now of people that are suggesting that what is happening in Palestine is okay, that Israel has to do this, that it's absolutely necessary because we've got to kill Hamas.
Well, they have the right to defend themselves.
Even though it's been proven, two fronts. One, that Netanyahu's government has been funding Hamas. And two, that the Israeli armed forces have already killed about 60 of the hostages. So this idea that we've got to save the hostages. And until that is done, we must continue this mass slaughter, which is north of 10,000 people now, and apparently it's 6,000 children that have been killed.
Well, that's the majority of people there. So that's how that works. So the picture on the right, I don't know if you guys look, you could see there's a big screen with the woman talking. She was an amazing speaker. But that's just to show you how far away we were. That screen is about a football field away from the actual stage. Mm-hmm. And we were on this far from that, and it still went on behind me. Like it was just,
luckily they had speakers to project.
No, they did. The whole setup was very professional. Right, go to the next slide. Next slide. This is just more shots of what it looked like all around. You see happy people, like there were smiling people. Like this wasn't, it was a very chill
Part
event.
of the reason I think that people were very happy in spite of all of the sadness and violence that is going on right now is that the people that were there, the more and more people that showed up, the more that they realized it was 10,000, then it was 30,000, then it was 100,000, and then it was even more than that. They realized that, yeah, we're actually on the right side of this issue. And it looks like the people are starting to wake up to that reality. Maybe we might actually get somewhere with this.
Well, the mass movement eventually made its way over to the White House. And when I tell you this thing was, there are no words. Like the White House was surrounded so many people deep and everybody was being peaceful. And yet I went back to the hotel that night and put on, just for shits and giggles, and on Fox News, you have a woman literally saying that the Palestinian the Free Palestinian movement, when they're chanting from the river to the sea, is a call for genocide against the Jews. And that's so not true. That's just not true. And I'm sitting here, I'm looking out my hotel window at this point at all the people just still milling around and waving flags. And this woman is sitting there just spewing this vile rhetoric on TV that is just so not true.
That sounds like something that libs of TikTok would be saying. You see, for those of you who don't know, the account online that calls out all of the overwoke people that has been doing it for a while and obviously doing it for, political points, libs of TikTok, is actually, I don't remember her name, but I know that she is a Zionist and a Zionist Jewish woman. And you're going to see very quickly just how insane you cannot be of the mind that I'm going to stand on one side or another side. I keep insisting that if RFK ever really came around on this issue, he could actually find a lane where he could win the presidency, because this is an actual issue that is going to move people at the ballot box next year in many, many ways.
And now for the sheer size of it, for you guys looking at this, if you can look at the screen. So this overhead picture is maybe like, I don't know, 1/6 of the crowd. Like, because that would be like, if you broke it was like a giant, if you picture a giant rectangle, like a candy bar, and you broke it into like 6 pieces, this would be one of those pieces, just for frame of reference. And this was the one I showed my mom. And I said, look, I'm right by the flag.
You are? I think you're right there.
Well, what's weird is I'm all disoriented right now looking down at this, and I can't remember which side of that flag I actually am on. And I'm trying to...
Near the triangle.
No, I think I'm not near the triangle.
Okay, maybe you're near the black.
And then there's this whole attitude about the Palestinian flag, like it's a terrorist flag and it's a Hamas flag. No, it's not. The flag existed before that. Like, it's just the flag of their people. If you would like them to have a national flag, then you'd have to give them self-determination. Then it would be a flag. See, these are people that don't even have a passport. They don't have anywhere to have a passport from. We won't allow them to have a country or a passport. So they just are stuck, like basically just,
and remember, the way that they always want to frame this is in the context of thousands of listen, when you have over 250,000 people that are there, you say thousands to make it seem like maybe 3 or 4 or 5,000 people showed up. No, you actually...
I just like the picture.
I think the picture's great. And I think the picture speaks to the reality of what's going on here. And look, part of the reason why you do not see any type of, pro-Israel marches is because they could never get, forget 1/10 of the amount of people that are out there. And they probably couldn't get 1/50th of the amount of people that were out there, because they know that they're on the wrong side of history. It's really no different than what's going on in Ukraine. Overwhelmingly, people know that what's happening with the war in Ukraine is being perpetrated by us controlling NATO and ensuring that this goes on. Like you said, Ukraine is the new Vietnam War.
Yeah, that's going to go on.
And so the new Holocaust, as crazy as this is to actually contemplate, is actually happening right now in Gaza.
Okay, that's my and just as for people to realize, the picture on the left with the guy with the afro is like my most favorite picture for a lot of reasons. But if you look, the woman at the bottom, the way she's looking up at him, by the way, that little flag literally was coming out of his afro, which I just found so entertaining. And just the whole picture. And then I do like the BB is a bitch sign. That was also kind of a little thing. Some people got very creative.
I think he's a lot worse than that, but nevertheless, he's certainly, he is a...
Isn't that cool, though?
You know who BB is? Honestly, BB's Mussolini.
Yeah, I know, he's horrible.
Really is.
He's horrible.
Like, he's going to end with all, and I mean this in the nicest way possible. BB's going to end up like Mussolini. because he's not that far off.
Do you like? Isn't that cool?
I think it's great.
I think that shot came out really well. I sent it to Max. Yeah, and then you've got this sign, Sleepy Joe, stop being Israel's hoe, which I just, people were original.
They were. Well, a lot of times it's kind of like going to, it's like the old days of going to a WWE event when everybody had the signs up during the Attitude Era. And
well, this is just, it was just really amazing.
Yeah.
It was just really amazing. That's my friend. I don't need to, she doesn't necessarily choose to be on the podcast.
Have a nice day.
But yeah. And so that was us in front of the White House. And it was just, it kept getting thicker and thicker and thicker. It was
shout out to all the wonderful people that were there. Also a big shout out to Cynthia Mendez, who came up to Jen at the event to tell me about. She apparently wrote, I haven't responded, and wrote some stuff on social media.
She was sweet because I wasn't thinking I was ever good. It had been a while since I've seen her. I've interviewed so many candidates that I wouldn't have necessarily recognized her. So I'm glad she saw me, but I was just glad she was the only person I ran into that I knew. And that because even people I knew that were there, that we were trying to coordinate, we could not get cell service in this crowd. We couldn't get cell service. And even if you knew where someone was, there was no way you were going there. Like you couldn't get to that person. I was supposed to coordinate with Max Alvarez. I was supposed to coordinate with Alethea. Like there was no coordinating.
Also, shout out to Jose Vega. He was there. Talk about a person who really just puts in the work, does an amazing job. Shout out to Alethea and Craig Shapiro.
And Medea, Benjamin and Code Pink were there.
Well, Alethea and Craig are great activists. They do an amazing job. And, Alethea put out some really great video clips of the event. Shout out to Jewish Voice for Peace. They have done an amazing job of doing what is necessary to show that this is not a, Jews versus the world, bullshit narrative, which has been going on for decades and decades and decades.
We need to connect with people from the Palestinian youth movement. Those kids are amazing. I say kids, they're not really kids, but they are to me, but they're amazing.
And of course, big shout out to Medea Benjamin and the amazing work that Code Pink has done, particularly in the last week.
And Ty Berry, let's not forget, he's always there.
Yes.
And I'm sorry I couldn't get to your guys' thing. I couldn't even work my way back from that crowd if I wanted to get back to that street.
But, credit, because they're obviously going to do everything they can to pretend like this didn't actually happen over the weekend. But a big shout out specifically to Code Pink because of what they did at the Senate hearing with who I like to call, obviously, President Blinken. Although at this point, I don't think anybody doubts that President Blinken is a very fitting title for what's been going on.
The speeches were amazing.
Yes, coming up with the blood on the hands, so it was very genius.
No, the speeches were great.
But as you even suggested, look, when you have at least 250,000 people gathered in a very small space, getting cell service, it's probably going to knock out the tower, and there's only so much that you can do.
I also had a different theory. I don't know. I feel like I've been doing this long enough that I always look for the dark shadows, but it is very possible that it was just there were so many people, and everyone had their cell phones out. Everybody was taking pictures and video, and there were. So I don't know enough about cell service to say whether or not what that does to it, but it would not surprise me at all if something was done to sort of inhibit the cell service. It wouldn't surprise me. There wasn't even the way this was covered was not covered at all accurately, which I wouldn't expect it to. But the thing is that there were 300,000 people there that all had the same basically calming experience. And so those are witnesses. We're witnesses. And it's like, you're not going to be able to gaslight me about this. You're not going to be able to say this was some sort of unholy riot and crazy. I'm never going to believe that. So,
and one more shout out, particularly to Mr. Eugene Puryear.
Eugene Puryear. I've been following him for a long time. If you guys aren't watching Breakthrough News with Eugene and Rania, I highly recommend. Rania also has her show on that channel as well. But the two of them are great, especially when it comes to covering things in Middle East and Africa. That is one of my go-tos. And Eugene was there. Again, I would have liked to go say hi, but there was no chance of that ever happening. But his speech was amazing. If you guys get a chance to watch Eugene's speech, he was like fire. It was great. And it was funny. I wasn't paying attention at one point. We were trying to get resituated. And then all of a sudden I heard this voice and I'm like, is that Eugene Puryear? And I like turned around, and sure enough, there he was on the big screen.
We're going to play you a clip now of how it was actually covered in the media. Haven't seen it yet, but I'm not optimistic it's going to be anything good.
No.
So just
what is this from?
Brace yourself. It's from Saturday, so we'll see exactly how this was covered.
What media is this?
Not sure.
Okay.
I'll put it together. We'll see.
Okay.
Here we go.
The corporate media spews lie after lie about the Palestinian struggle to manufacture support for a genocidal apartheid state. Yeah. The battle of ideas is in full swing, and everyone must do their part to push against what is widely spread and unquestionably believed. Long live Palestine! Long live Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Biden, Biden, you can't hide! Biden, Biden, you can't hide! We charge you with genocide! We charge you with genocide!
We need to tell you that no amount of hypocrisy of trying to tell us all of a sudden that you're going to have an international plan on Islamophobia at a time where you're throwing bombs on the heads of our brothers and sisters in Gaza. That will not work. That will not work. Your days for coming around and getting Muslim vote for nothing are over.
On August 16th of this year, 2023, I got a news alert that my name had been mentioned in an article. And this time, it wasn't Ted Cruz calling me an anti-Semite. This time, it was another Omar Suleiman, a 16-year-old who shares my name, who was murdered in the West Bank, where, by the way, there is no Hamas. And he was shot in the chest in cold blood while he was riding his dirt bike around the West Bank, where his family has lived for generations. His name was Jose Omar Suleiman, the same name that my parents gave me. Last year, the 7-year-old boy, Rayan Suleiman, in the West Bank, once again, occupied territory, while he was walking home from school with his book sack, which had an animated car on it, and suddenly found himself being chased down by IDF soldiers who claimed that he had thrown stones at them. And with their full force, they followed him home to his house. And he went and hid in the corner of his room. And as they banged on the door and started to bang on his window, a 7-year-old boy with no medical history died of a heart attack. Cardiac arrest. A 7-year-old.
Yeah, that happened. There's no shortage of stories. That was one of many horrible stories.
And shout out to Status Quo as always. John
Yes.
Farina. Sorry, Jen couldn't get to you.
Oh,
That was
they
not-
know anybody who was there has no expectation. They understand that there was no connecting. This wasn't like when we go downtown to Fort Lauderdale and you meet up with somebody. This wasn't that. So the stories are horrific, and they're babies. More than half of Gaza is children. And that's because people don't live long there. How can you live? You have your infrastructure is so bad. You don't have access to clean drinking water. So life expectancy is pretty low. So most of the people there are children. So these are babies.
Now, unfortunately, because the overwhelming majority of people in this country see Gaza for what it is, which is a genocide, it's clear that they're systematically killing these people. And they're, I also always find it so interesting when there are those who say, well, why won't Egypt just take it's if to say they don't, we're literally stealing your land, we're stealing all you have, get the hell out of here. And then it's, well, why won't other people just take them? Even if they don't have the justification, the idea that they can't see the reality.
The caucasity.
Yeah, there's
the absolute caucasity of the situation. Well,
just come to your neighborhood and, people should reenact that here.
Right. You go and just go to that other neighborhood. They'll let you in. But it's, first of all, I would suggest.
But of course, that gets back to the whole idea of dehumanization.
Oh, yeah. We could just move them wherever. Yes. Like it doesn't matter if they could go there, even if those countries open their arms and welcome them with citizenship to their countries, which that's not how it goes. They end up living in refugee camps and they don't get citizenship, and it's a disaster. And right now, Egypt is not from my understanding, an economic position to be able to incur that level of immigration. And so it's like, and they shouldn't have to. That's not where they're supposed. That would be like somebody coming in here and taking our country and being like, look, why won't Canada or Mexico just take you people? Just go to Canada or Mexico. There's plenty of space. I don't know. It's so arrogant, the caucasity, the absolute caucasity of these people. It's a level of entitlement that really is just off the charts. It really is. It's so like, and it's this thing like when we have with interpersonal relationships, like I'm very averse to triangles. Like your issue with another person is with that person. You don't need to bring someone else in, get their opinion, tell them to do. It doesn't involve anybody else. This doesn't involve anybody else. This isn't Egypt or Jordan's problem. This isn't Lebanon's problem. Like it's not it should not be their burden. And yet they all have refugee camps in them and have for years and years. And it's very horrible. So, and by the way, those are the Palestinians that aren't in the concentration camp.
Yeah.
We're no longer calling Gaza a prison.
Unfortunately, for the elected officials in this country that we feel that we can rely on, that are going to step up and speak truth to power as they need to.
Where are you?
Listen, there are plenty that have been major letdowns, exceptional letdowns, but there is no greater letdown than Senator Bernie Sanders.
It's upsetting.
And why he has chosen to fail on this issue so badly. The fact that, of all people, Dick Durbin comes out and says that we need a ceasefire.
I have my thoughts on why that is, though. I have my thoughts on that. That was basically a controlled opposition. I think it was by design. I can't fathom that Dick Durbin would have done anything without the consent of Biden. I just don't fathom that. So to me, that was sort of like their way of getting there to be sort of like a slow sort of leak of pressure without them having to be the ones doing it.
If you guys take a look at the posts we put up last night for Instagram and Facebook, we allude to the fact that it's already been revealed in Truth Out that what's basically happening and is going to attempt to happen, as President Blinken, as I said,
this is so bad.
who actually went to Jerusalem the other day to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu to talk about calming things down for a minute.
That man would not know how to calm things down.
And even if he were to attempt to calm things down, it would end up becoming such a disaster, because the goal here is to try to let things be quiet so that way we can get back to doing our plan, which is, of course, to completely eradicate the Palestinian people, not only in Gaza, but out of the entire state of Israel.
Well, and I think that's what people aren't realizing. Right now, while everybody's focusing on Gaza, the increased violence in the West Bank from settlers against the indigenous people there, against the Palestinians, has been very, very high. There's been a huge increase in settler violence out there. And instead of the IDF or anybody protecting the Palestinians, they look the other way most of the time, if not participate in the harassment of the Palestinians. So there's nobody there to defend them. They don't have law enforcement. They don't have anybody to help them, to defend them. And they're, as an occupied territory, as an occupied place, according to and I don't know if it's what UN Charter or Geneva Convention, I don't know. I don't do international law. But the occupying force has a complete obligation to care for the occupied people that are in its territory and its purview. So it is really the responsibility, even if you were to say, I agree with having a state of Israel, it is Israel's complete responsibility to secure and protect the people that are within its occupied territory. And it's failing to do that. In fact, we know the opposite, right? So this is it's consistent. And the West Bank, people are not watching it right now.
To say that we need a ceasefire and an end to the occupation would be an understatement. If your concerns are endless violence,
Why can't they say it?
Anti-Semitism, everything,
Why can't they say
are all
ceasefire?
stem from it.
Why
And
is
so
that
you're
a
going
bad
to see Bernie went on with Dana Bash yesterday, and for whatever reason,
Oh my
just could
God.
not say it. Couldn't say it, even though Dana set him up for it.
And he went the whole Hamas route.
Here we go.
I want to just clarify one thing, Senator, if I might. You support a humanitarian pause in Gaza. Some of your fellow progressives say that there should be a full-on ceasefire, which would require an agreement on both sides to halt the fighting. Do you support a ceasefire? And if not, why not?
Well, I don't know how you can have a ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, with an organization like Hamas, which is dedicated to turmoil and chaos and destroying the state of Israel. And I think what the Arab countries in the region understand, that Hamas has got to go. So,
look, I did what I said what I said, and I mean what I said.
I'm starting to not even like you anymore.
Well, look, unfortunately, I happen to be somebody who is afraid for the Jewish people.
I don't think so, because that's creating more anti-Semitism. The increase of anti-Semitism is staggering right now, which we didn't need any increase.
We do not need Hamas. They are a bad organization. They are, unfortunately.
That's just not true. That's just not true.
This is the information I'm given.
Yeah,
by my
well,
good
you
friend
know
Joe.
what? How come I know more information?
Listen, I have a few years on you, but that doesn't mean that I'm smarter than you.
No, clearly, but you're not getting the right information. Hamas is not a terrorist organization. Hamas is a resistance organization.
Listen, if anybody knows a thing or two about resistance, it's me. I resist the change. I should have done a lot of things differently when I ran for president in 2016 as well as
How
2020.
is it that you fought for civil rights so hard, and yet you're sitting there and changing the subject to Hamas on this?
I'm an old man. What can I say?
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not-
so disappointing. I'm so disappointed.
I've been known to disappoint a few people in my day. This is not a new thing.
No.
Unfortunately, my takes have not been that strong as of late. It looks like a lot of people are really upset with what I said to Dana Bash on CNN. I did not do the best job.
No.
I am still here to tell you that
How can
we
you
can
not
have a two-state solution.
No, we can't. How can you not be calling for a ceasefire? I don't understand why those words are so hard to say.
Look, unfortunately, I am a marked man, and if I use the words,
99% of the world is with that.
if I use those particular words, or word for that matter, I could be in a lot of trouble, and I don't want to be in trouble. I can say
Who you're
everything
in
but
trouble
that
with.
word. And
You're in trouble. To me, your soul is in trouble if you don't say it. So
my soul has already been condemned because I am responsible for Donald Trump becoming president of the United States. And apparently it's my fault that I ran for president against Hillary Clinton, and that's why she did not win.
you know what? It actually is somewhat your fault that we had Trump, but only because you didn't fight to when they stole it from you. Because the truth is, I think that you could have won that year. So I do think it is your fault, but not because you ran, but because you didn't fight after that. Yes, I do actually think you're partially responsible for us having Trump.
Look, I unfortunately can't live in the past, and my future is not too bright. I don't have many years left. I am not exactly at a point making the best decisions possible.
Clearly.
I cannot speak for other senators out there, but I will tell you here today, just because I am here now and I have had a moment to reflect after my interview yesterday with Dana Bash, I can tell you all that the fact of the matter is we do need a ceasefire. The reason I don't say it is because my good friend Joe asked me not to.
Joe is not your friend.
And he keeps insisting that if I say it, it's going to cause bad politics for the Democratic Party, particularly for him, because he will not step down. He insists on running again.
Does he? Is it really him?
Well, I don't know if it's him or if it's his wife or his family or any of all of the institutional people here in D.C., the swamp, if you will. They keep insisting that he has to run for president, and I personally don't agree. I don't think it's a good idea. But I, of course, I'm way too old to run for a third time. I can't do it.
Yeah, but I don't hear you speaking out about this, though. See, that's the problem.
I am not allowed to speak out about it. Listen,
I don't know what you're afraid of. I don't know what you're afraid of. I don't know what any of these people are afraid of.
Try to understand. I have been on Capitol Hill for the better part of 3.5 decades. And you know what that means? That means I have worked very hard for those committee assignments. And I am not about to just give them up
to
save tens of thousands of lives in the Middle East. I can't do it.
I know, apparently.
My career is very important.
Clearly.
My legacy is even more important.
And it is decent. You're still definitely more pro than con. But I would just say that, this is definitely a bad look.
Oh, it's a very bad look.
This is not going to age well, Bernie. This will not be one of your final
Who would have ever
moments.
accused me of aging well in the first place? I mean, I'm doing the best I can to hang on for dear life. I don't know if I'm going to live to see the day where we will have a real trailblazing, non-corporate, populist president of the left in the United States while I'm alive.
I don't know.
I, of course, have lost my way in many respects. And I apologize to each and every one of you who I have let down. But remember, it's not me, it's us.
Yes, but us needs a ceasefire. Us wants a ceasefire.
Well,
that's what us wants.
I'm telling you here today that I said ceasefire, even though I'm really not allowed to say it. So get out there, let everybody know that I said it.
Have you heard your friend Joe's new nickname?
I can't repeat that either. That's a very negative word. It's unfortunately, I don't think Joe is necessarily the one making the call right now.
No, but that's when, you know what? When you're at the top of the food chain, it lands on you.
God bless you all. Stay safe and free Palestine.
Yeah. If only Bernie had actually said that. It's so disappointing.
Yeah, it's very
disappointing. So disappointing. First of all,
please do, Schulte. We would love that. $25 donation gets you one of these bad boys. One of those bad boys.
You could pick one. We have purple tees or the jerseys. So, the fact that, forget that he didn't call for a ceasefire. The fact that I'm looking at Bernie just sitting there repeating those Hamas tropes. Hamas is a terrorist organization. All the Arab countries want to get rid of them. But that's not true. That's not true. I don't know
who I get to the point where I'm just thinking, Bernie, who are you trying to impress at this point? Like who?
Hamas is the party that was basically the only thing on the menu that was offered to them in their last election in 2006. So to say that the people there chose this is absurd. And to say that Hamas is just a terrorist organization, to label things. I am so tired of this. Words have meanings. Words have meanings. Hamas is not a terrorist organization. It's a political party or a political group that is living within a concentration camp and has forms of resistance. And let's be very clear that the people in Gaza have tried multiple ways, multiple times, non-violently, many times, to try to seek a solution for this and to try to get justice. You had the last intifada where, there were the two intifadas, and then there was that last March of Return. And they were all there every Friday, just peacefully minding. Yeah, some people threw rocks. So then they started sniping medics and journalists and people. I just, they've tried through international law. And then the United States just said, yeah, we're in violation of international law. So we're just going to pull out of the International Criminal Court so that they tried all those ways. So then finally, I guess, your last resort is, if we're going to be in here until we die with people basically living in a concentration camp, they're angry and they're going to maybe try to take some people with them. I just, to me, to not see that who would choose to be born in captivity and just live like that and not try to do something to help yourself.
But as we have shown, the power of AIPAC, DMFI, and ADL, they're very powerful and they have a lot of money. And do not forget that a significant portion of the billionaire class are Zionist Jews. And they do believe in the benevolence of the Jewish state and that they can.
There are many by the way, the majority of Zionists in this country are Christians.
Sure, but that's not the point I was making.
Okay.
I said that the very wealthy Zionists happen to be Jewish, which is true. And so to their end, they have their agenda, much like Mr. Wexler's you saw at Harvard, and much like RFK, who literally shoved his butt up Wexler's ass now, not just Shmuley's. Apparently, he thinks that it is okay to silence people, to, censor them.
Who said that?
Bobby.
Oh.
So apparently you're okay with you want free speech only to a point, but the second it tiptoes into an area of political inconvenience, then all of a sudden your tune has to change.
How can he be so
obtuse?
Not just that, but like he has so much dissonance. Like, how could somebody who would want to pardon Julian Assange be talking about censorship? Like, there's such dissonance there.
That is the reason to criticize more than any other. You know what I'm thinking? How is it that somebody like Tucker Carlson is getting this issue almost completely correct? And
Tucker's often good on foreign policy, though, and definitely he's pretty. I mean,
listen, Tucker. Go back to 2017. Tucker was the one who literally looked in the camera and told President Trump, "Stop attempting to get into a war with Syria. Stop bombing and all that." And then the next thing you know, the bombing stopped. I mean, this is without question. I still think the biggest reason that they would not want Trump in the White House ever again is because they don't want somebody who isn't going to go along with the military-industrial complex's plan.
But he did, though.
To them, yes, not as much as Joe.
No. Joe went beyond what the.
Well,
Joe
but I don't even convinced that Joe was even pulling.
No, it doesn't matter. His group, his leaders, whatever. They didn't just comply with the MIC. They said, "Let's just give you more."
Schultz, if you have a request, we can use whatever amount of capital for our channel right now. You want to see an impression by me? Make a suggestion, okay? We'll work hard for the money.
We work
hard for the money.
We're like, my uncle years ago owned. This was back in the 70s. My uncle owned the largest porn emporium in the Tenderloin district in San Francisco in the 70s. And they had the live girls, like where the thing goes up, like you put the money in the thing. It was like like the change and the things in the live girls. And that's what I think of when I think of.
Well, $25 is a lot more than you would have to pay for a quick peep show. But
not nowadays. That's, inflation.
Yes.
I don't think places have live girls anymore. Well, maybe they do. Maybe there's those places still exist. I don't know. He had like this whole 2-story emporium thing going on there.
The reason why we bring up Bernie is because he is somebody who we do expect more from.
Yes.
As we should. And the fact of the matter is, Bernie has been a major letdown on this issue. The problem that we have is that there is another person out there who, for some reason, people think his opinion is extremely important when it comes to all matters of politics, and in many ways is the whisperer for the upper liberal class. And lo and behold, not a surprise, another hypocrite born into complete and absolute insanity when it comes to their takes, especially on the issue of Israel, is Bill Maher. And Bill,
I haven't seen, just as a preface, people, I have no idea what he said, and I have a feeling I'm going to be like really annoyed.
Oh, you're not going to like this at all. Bill Maher wants you to know that your opinion about what's going on in the Middle East is stupid and irrelevant, and he knows all, and will let you know right now why this is so important. So get ready, because Bill Maher is going to educate you on exactly how important the state of Israel really is, because us mere mortals are too dumb to generally understand. So he's going to do it in classic upper class liberal fashion.
Good.
Let you know exactly why the state of Israel must exist and must continue to do what they're doing. Here we go.
And finally, new rule for all the progressives and academics who refer to Israel as an outpost of Western civilization like it's a bad thing. Please note, Western civilization is what gave the world pretty much every goddamn liberal precept that liberals are supposed to adore. Individual liberty, scientific inquiry, rule of law, religious freedom, women's rights, human rights, democracy, trial by jury, freedom of speech. Please, somebody stop us before we enlighten again. And since one can find all these concepts in today's Israel and virtually nowhere else in the Middle East, if anything, the world would be a better place if it had more Israels. Of course, this message falls on deaf ears to the current crop who reduce everything to being only victims or victimizers, so Israel is lumped in as the toxic fruit of the victimizing West. The irony being that all marginalized people live better today because of Western ideals, not in spite of them. Martin Luther King used Henry David Thoreau's essay Civil Disobedience to help shape the civil rights movement. The UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights owes its core to Rousseau and Voltaire. Cleisthenes never showed up for a sexual harassment seminar. But without him, there's no democracy. The cop who murdered George Floyd got 21 years for violating his Fourth Amendment rights, an idea we got directly from John Locke, who no one in college would ever study anymore because he's so old and so white and so dead. Gaza wasn't seized by Israel like India or Kenya was by the British Empire, and the partitioning of the region wasn't decided by Jews, but by a vote of the United Nations in 1947, with everyone from Russia to Haiti voting for it. But apparently they don't teach this at Drag Queen Story Hour anymore. Now, it is true that for too long, we didn't study enough Asian or African or Latin American history. But part of the reason for that is, frankly, there's not as much to study. Colleges replaced courses in Western Civ. Boo! Eye roll, dead white men, am I right? They replaced that with world civilization classes, which is fine in theory, but what it meant in practice is you read queer poetry of the African diaspora instead of Shakespeare. And I'm sure there's value in both. But as usual, America only ever overcorrects. And so we're at this place now where the words Western Civ became kind of a shorthand for white people ruined everything. No, they didn't live up to their own ideals for far too long and committed atrocities, but people back then were all atrocious. Not just the white ones, depending on who had the power.
I'm so angry right now. Why did you make me watch that?
First of all, they were saying, hey, listen,
I'm
Colin,
so angry.
I have to be able to stop and play this thing. It needs to be able to be imposed where we can pause it and keep going instead of
here's the thing. Bill, you white supremacist, elitist piece of shit. Do you think that Locke and Voltaire and all the other old white people just came out onto the earth and the whole humanity started with these brilliant white men? No, because guess what, Bill? You weren't taught the history that was before that, where they got it from. And I'll tell you what, it wasn't from white folk. The fact that he sat there and just so white and arrogantly said, before us, we didn't have all these things. And every single one of those things is not true. It is just patently not true. I do not know enough. That's why another reason we need to talk to consciously. I do not know enough about African history to be specific, but I do know that math and sciences and architecture and like building things like, you know, pyramids and those things predated Eurocentric whiteness. And those people had figured a lot of shit out, like embalming and just, you know what, again, I am not an expert on this, but the fact that he would say, well, these old white men from whenever that was, whenever era, 1600s, they originated it. Oh, yes, they just came up with it. Like as if it wasn't anything. You know what? Who did we have on recently that was explaining about how, was it Harvey? No, not Harvey. John Nichols? Oh, God, who was it? I don't know, guys.
John Nichols, maybe?
I don't know. But the whole premise that our rights, it was a book I read recently. It might have been Tom Hartman. I don't know. Guys, we have so many people. Our rights, all of those things, our Constitution, the Founding Fathers documents, the kind of shit that people like Bill Maher think is so brilliant, was very, very heavily based on indigenous tribe culture. So it's so infuriating to me. He thinks that the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and all of this concept of justice and like that came from white people. Oh my God. Yes, it was just this original spawned idea. Some white man walking along said, oh my God, we should have rights. And then all the indigenous people should just be so thankful for you for sharing that with them. Do you? That is the caucasity.
Of all the things that Bill said in that segment that I think was the most telling, that completely went over my head at the time, he actually said, no, we would be better off if we had a lot more Israels around the world. Wow.
The fact, well, here's the thing. But in his mind, as he laid out, white people and the concept of settler colonialism is a benefit for the world. It's helped the world. Everybody has done better because of the white Western people.
And that is neoliberalism in a nutshell. Like it really is. Like the whole concept of what that means. And of course, it's always coming from these pseudo-intellectuals who think because they are well-read, you know, he went to Cornell and all of a sudden that makes him
He's a small little man.
And he's not somebody who I would ever trust to actually be able to do a tune-up or change a tire on an automobile. No. I always use that as an example of people who are not capable of actually of self-sustainment.
No.
This is why I prefer rural conservatives to big city liberals, because at least rural conservatives can survive in the wild and survive without basic things. Somebody like Bill Maher wouldn't know what the heck, he wouldn't survive a week. He might not even survive a few days.
He just oozes so much entitlement, but just the fact that he actually sat there and made it be like all these great things from history really came, he believes that they came from white people, from European white people. He thinks that they just made that shit up. Oh my God, he is so entitled. I want to strangle that man.
Yeah, he's definitely, you know what I think? I think it's the glasses. That's what it is. You see, he, for a long time, never wore glasses. And now all of a sudden he wears these sophisticated glasses.
You think they made him stupid?
Well, no, they always say that when you start wearing glasses that you naturally become smarter, that people think you're smarter.
I don't know. He's an idiot. You're an idiot, Bill. I can't believe I ever liked him. But no, he sits there and she's like, seriously, he truly, talk about a perfect example of brainwashed, whitewashing, how we are so improperly taught history in this country, and he's actually sitting there saying that we need to go learn history. Yeah, Bill, I would take your own advice. I'd go learn some. It didn't start with the white people, okay?
You know, if there was somebody who taught us a thing or two about how to become better enlightened about the world, it's a gentleman who actually somehow defied all human logic and became the governor of Minnesota as an independent 25 years ago this week. Which is kind of amazing when you think about it, because we're living in an era today where we are so desperate to get away from this two-party bullshit. And what is so unique about the two-party system in this country? You can never seem to agree on anything. And I mean anything. Can't agree on jack shit. But when it comes to foreign policy, particularly the military-industrial complex and Israel, you always manage to find common ground amongst Republicans and Democrats. You know who doesn't agree with this shit? The independents of this country, who now make up over 50% of the electorate. And that's not changing.
Not just them. I don't agree with this shit.
I don't either. I'm technically a Democrat too, even though I think that the parties.
Well, we have no choice here if we want to participate in primaries. That's just the way it is. I mean, it's like we had to pick one, or we're not participating, and that's stupid. We were enlightened the first time he graced us with his presence on our show. We will be equally, if not more so, enlightened the second time around. The former governor of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura, welcome back to Generational Change.
Well, thanks. It's nice to be back, but I don't know. I feel I wear glasses now because I can't see. And, you guys are wailing on us that now wear glasses. Well, yeah, I can't see nothing anymore. I mean, I can't read when things are up close, so I got to have them. And now even my long vision's gone. I have to wear now special shades when I play golf so that I can see hopefully a long shot that I can hit at my old age if I'm
You realize, Governor, that's a first world problem, yes?
That's what?
It's a first world problem, yes?
Exactly. No, I mean, you guys got off on this tangent about glasses. Well, I have to wear them now. I can't see without them. I even have to drive with them now.
Poor thing. Well, you know what? Apparently, you're not the only one who's dealing with that. A good friend of the show as well, and somebody who learned a thing or two from the governor, probably better than most people. Tyrel Ventura, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hey, everybody, how you doing? Yeah, I gotta wear them too now.
Yeah,
it's tragic, man. This getting old thing is really, really frightening. But you're right. It's all first world problems, especially in light of everything that's happened in the world today. It's crazy times. It's dark times. But I do still feel if we keep our heads right, we can get through it. And we can help people in the process as well.
So I was fortunate enough to be able to be in Washington, D.C. on Saturday for the march, and we were talking about it coming on here. And the key thing is very important to me is that people know what it actually happened there, so that when people start twisting it around and being like, oh, there were violent thugs and they were yelling death to Jews and all of this stuff, like to make sure that history is being told properly, because I feel like that's the biggest problem we have is we're dealing with people that don't know history. We're not taught it properly.
And what happens if you don't know it? Then you're due to repeat it, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Isn't that
at least that's what I've always been told. If you don't study it, you're due to repeat it.
We're doing it over and the fact that people can't see the similarities and what's happening with the Palestinians to what we did to indigenous people here, like they don't see that it really is the same thing. They somehow feel like it's different.
Well, the thing that you have to wake up to, and this was something that I woke up to in my lifetime, when I was 18 years old and I went to public school and all that and ended up being a Vietnam veteran and truly went off to serve my country. And you're really at 18 years old, you're right out of school, but you're very ignorant on true history. You're not always taught everything that you really need to know. And one story I love to tell that deals with Tyrel's grandfather, who happened to have 6 bronze battle stars in World War II, my dad. And I remember coming home in high school telling my dad how we had to fight in Vietnam because we had to stop the domino effect of communism. And I always remember my dad looking at me, and he had 6 bronze battle stars. And he said, "Is that what they're teaching you in school?" And I said, "Yeah." And I'll never forget, he looked at me and said, "That's the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever heard in my life." And now I'm caught. This is my dad, who I respect. And I was not a kid who didn't like school. I liked school. I enjoyed it. Some of the greatest time of my life. But now I'm at conflict. You know what? My dad's telling me this is BS, and my teachers are saying this. And my dad looked at me and said, "You want to know why we're fighting in Vietnam?" I said, "Why?" He said, "Because somebody's making big money."
Yeah.
And in the end, he was right. But the thing I want to get to is this. We were never taught in school about how destructive and how horrible colonialism is. You're not taught that. You're not taught. You're not taught. I mean, I sit back today and go, how in the hell could they tell us Columbus discovered America when there were already people here? You know, what kind of nonsense when you sit back and look at, I was fed this as a child. Well, as a child, you don't see through things like that. You don't necessarily ask those questions. You're more worried about baseball that afternoon. And, you know, and so I laugh today. I love, do you guys ever see that comedy by Eddie Izzard?
No, I know who he is.
Oh my God. You guys got to see when Eddie Izzard talks about foreign policy and that you got to have a flag. If you ain't got a flag, you ain't got shit. And he talks about colonialism, how when the British went over into India and took it over, because why? They stuck a flag in, and the Indians say, well, wait a minute, there's 1 million of us here. That don't matter. You don't have a flag. You gotta see this thing by Izzard. You'll be on the floor. You'll be on the floor laughing.
That sounds like what Israel did, though. They told us there was nobody there, and because nobody had that. It wasn't a nation because there wasn't a paperwork. They didn't have paperwork. You know, you want an inside story? I guess I can tell it today. I spent the night at the White House with President Clinton. And I slept in the Lincoln bedroom, and I didn't pay a cent.
That's right.
Remember when they were renting it out to get fundraising? You could go sleep a night in the Lincoln bedroom, and I suppose pay them $50,000, you know, and then you can say you did it, right? Well, I actually did it, and because the president at the time, Bill Clinton, and we were going to play golf the next day. Well, it turned out we couldn't. We got trapped in business of government, and it never happened. But I spent the night with him that night, and if you recall, at the end of Clinton's term, he tried to get peace in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he wanted for his legacy.
Yeah.
That was what he was hoping for. And so he's sitting there with me. Now, you got to bear in mind, he's talking to the independent former Navy SEAL. And we generally solve problems through massive explosions, if I can use that type of terminology.
Yeah.
That's how we deal with problems in that area of the world, of being a member of SEAL team. Anyway, that aside, the president lays it all out for me in the Middle East. And in layman's terms, what he says to me is this: it's all about one mound of dirt. It's about one mountain over there. But here's the deal. The Israelis think it belongs to them. The Palestinians believe it belongs to them. And guess what? The two religions they both have agreed they'll never wreck it. They won't do nothing to it. They'll cherish it and all that. But neither religion will allow the other religion to be in control of it. So therefore, knowing with that understanding, you're never going to get peace, because when do religions ever compromise? Never. So you got two religions that won't compromise, fighting over the same piece of dirt, over a mound of dirt over there. And you know what I said to the president? And my son just dies when I say this.
Oh, no.
I looked at the president, I said, and the president said to me, Governor, what would you do? And I said, well, Mr. President, it truly sounds like a very simple thing to me. It sounds to me like child psychology. I said, when you have two children fighting over the same toy, you know what you do?
I do.
You remove the toy.
Remove the toy.
And then they don't have nothing to fight over. You know, if the toy gets removed, you don't try to reason with them.
No.
Because it ain't going to work with kids fighting over the same toy. You got to get rid of the toy. So I looked at the president and said, why don't you simply call in a massive airstrike, blow this thing off the face of the earth? We'll claim our computers screwed up. We'll apologize 50 times over. And 5 years from now, they won't have nothing to fight over anymore.
Oh, Lord.
Well, there's what you get if you contact a Navy SEAL about how to just take care of a problem.
If I didn't know any better, I would have thought Henry Kissinger was talking just now.
Well, okay, let's look the other way. You can laugh at that, but what do you got that's going to work?
No,
Nothing.
You're right. You're right.
Nothing, because you got two religions fighting over the same thing. And why do you think I'm an agnostic atheist?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
there's your example, because 90% of all your wars end up being religion based. One person worships God different than another person, so let's kill him.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of the tragedy. The other side of this tragedy too is the fact that, you know, I keep seeing this and kind of buried under every headline and buried under all of this is this strange fascination we as human beings. I wish I could say it's just a U.S. issue, but it clearly it isn't. We believe horribly violent that somehow violent revenge is the answer to every problem.
Yeah.
Is that if we're wronged in some way, whether, you know, if someone attacks us or if someone does this, then okay, we are justified to go and then violently attack somebody back. And you see that on a personal level, you see that on a national level, you see that on a global level. And I think until we get out of this mentality that somehow violence justifies violence, because all that does is it creates a terrible cycle.
Yep.
You know, the more bombs you drop on a community, that's not going to make them suddenly throw up their hands and say, oh, you're right, we were wrong. Or, oh, you know, all it does is it creates more terrorism. It creates that endless cycle of violence that we're seeing perpetrated today over and over and over again, especially with what Israel is doing to Palestine right now.
Ty, you're making the case that I've been fighting my entire life. Because when I got trained as a Navy SEAL, you know what our genre was? We don't get mad, we get even.
Right. And that's the problem.
And see, I got brainwashed into that. You know, and so it's taken me a lifetime really to break loose from that thought process of because that's how the SEALs are. We don't get mad, we get even.
Because here's the other problem with that too, is that when you condition, let's say, a soldier or as a society that no matter what happens, you must retaliate violence to violence. When you condition a society to do that, what that does is that then allows bad actors, that allows the fascists of the world, that allows people who are seeking to take control and manipulate and do all that, because if they can get the public behind them, hey, we got hit, now we got to go hit back stronger, harder, right? We saw that take place with Iraq in post 9/11. You know, so when you see that kind of having that mentality in society is where you see these kind of power monger types come in and then use that to manipulate the public. And that's where the real danger comes in, when you have societies around the world conditioned to believe that the only way to answer violence is more violence and even worse violence. It's never going to solve the problem at the end of the day, because for every person that you kill, there's a mother, a father, a sister, a brother who is going to then want revenge for their loved one lost. And that just continues to create that endless cycle.
Yeah. You think the United States might have learned that lesson so far in fighting this concept called terrorism?
No, not at all.
Not profitable. Peace is not profitable. But I mean, that's the truth. It's not profitable. But we were even taught, like, as somebody who was raised from white Ashkenazi Jewish Western post-Holocaust fear-based mentality, we were taught that Arabs hated us and wanted to kill us and wanted to eradicate us, and that when they say things from the river to the sea, what they're talking about is a genocide against Jews. And we were literally taught that they hate us and want to kill us. So we go into this, like we're raised already feeling on a defensive, waiting for violence, being in this sort of victim mentality.
And that's sad. That's sad because it's like until we as a society, all societies around the world, grow beyond this idea of leading with hate, and leading with everyone's out to get you or everyone's going to try to kill you at some point in time. And like I said, that's on a community level, a national level, global level. We tread in fear as a human population.
You know what I want? I want something even simpler. All these people that claim to be religious, when are they going to act it?
Yeah.
I mean, there isn't a religion out there that, and I'm not an expert on religion, but to my knowledge, there's not one out there that doesn't tell you that killing is wrong.
Right. No, they all have the right concept.
Yeah. I mean, they all tell you, excuse for using mine, but thou shalt not kill.
Yeah.
You know, that's a universal thing. And I think it's absorbed by every religion, no matter what it is. You don't kill your fellow human beings. So why did they give all these exceptions?
So are you saying that
why is it you get an exception? That well, it's not written in stone. No, as the military, you can go kill.
Yeah.
If you're part of the military, it's okay to go kill.
So if you were president of the United States right now, or a candidate for president of the United States, are you saying that you would say we need a ceasefire and an end to the occupation? Are you saying that you would say that?
I would. Yeah, ceasefire. You're damn right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They can't say that. They can't say those words.
Because to me, again, violence to violence. What revenge is going to solve? What they did to the Israeli people was unconscionable. What happened, but solving it by killing thousands more of innocent individuals who had nothing to do with it and are poor, poverty-stricken, and kids and all that stuff. No, you're talking to a Vietnam veteran here. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I know, I mean, remember when we started carpet bombing Southeast Asia? When Nixon came in and said, oh, yeah, we're going to pull the troops out, but we're going to replace it with carpet bombing.
It's so cowardly.
Cowardly. All of it is. All of it is. And, I'll tell you what I would do as president. You want to know what Jesse Ventura would do as president?
Oh, here we go.
No. This is a good one. I would work. Now, again, remember, I learned this as a governor. You can't pass a law. Only the legislature can. But as president, I would work. I want to see a new law put into place where, first and foremost, let's start going back to the Constitution and forcing Congress to declare war.
Yes. Well, yes, they've tried to bring that back.
Can we go back to that type of thinking, go back to the document that matters, and Congress declares war, right? And so let's go back to that. But here's what I want to do. Anybody in Congress, if they're going to declare and send us to war, anybody who votes to go to war or to votes for violence has to pre-designate a family member who when that vote takes place, that family member must begin immediate military service.
That's like the Hunger Games.
I want the people that vote to send us to war to have a dog in the fight.
Oh, I agree. I mean, but to me,
because again, I'm from Vietnam, and I learned from that. None of the politicians back then had one kid who served in Vietnam. So how easy it was for them to send us all. And, another thing I want to hit, we're coming up to the anniversary of the murder of John Kennedy, President Kennedy. I want people to wake up to the fact that why do I study that murder, and why is that murder so important to me even today? And I'll tell you why. Because on November the 22nd, 1963, not only John Kennedy died that day from an assassin, and it wasn't Oswald. Not only did President Kennedy die that day, but 58,000 of my generation died that day, because there would not have been a Vietnam had John Kennedy lived.
I think you can make the argument that America died that day. I've been making that argument for a long time.
I'd like to believe America didn't die that day. We suffered a near fatal wound. We suffered but we didn't die that day. We're still here. And if
it's not looking good right now.
Right now. Wait a minute, you youngsters. Let me get you youngsters. I grew up in the 60s, and it didn't look that good then either.
Fair.
Yeah.
You know, back then they were pulling kids off the street and sending them to Vietnam to die. Back then they were shooting kids who were protesting the war on college campuses, Kent State. No, I've seen it before, and I've seen it even almost worse than it is now. I don't know. It's close.
We're there again. Off the charts. The censorship and the suppression is, to me, I've not seen it like this bad. It's gotten to an all-time high point, I think. Like, this is really bad situation we're in right now.
And I think, go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, and I think, and based on that, I think that's why it's so important that people today recognize the need for activism and being involved in your civics and being involved in your government, and not just sitting at your computer getting angrier and angrier and angrier. You know, you actually have to stand up and kind of get involved in the system if you're going to change the system. You know what else? It's too easy to be passive today, and we need less, you know, passivity. We can't just have keyboard warriors out there.
You know what else we need? You know what else we need? We need to elect people to the U.S. Senate that knows there's 3 branches of government.
Right, that's easier said than done.
Oh, no. I mean, I'm referring there to Senator Tommy Tuberville, who didn't even know there were 3 branches of government. And this man is a United States senator. Excuse me. I think I learned that in, 4th grade or 5th grade civics?
Yeah, no, there's really no excuse for these people.
And you know who's ultimately to blame, though? We are.
It's our education.
Yeah.
No, we're to blame. We elect these people. We're the ones putting them in office. We're the ones that accept this bullshit.
Here's the thing, though, right? So only a certain type of people are really ever able to run for office. Most people can't afford to run for office. And it's like, so we're already in a situation where our choices, our menu is already made up of a certain level of stock of people that are pretty much those kinds of people, because they're people that are predominantly privileged.
Yeah, yes and no. I can argue against you and say that when I ran for governor of Minnesota, I made more money being governor than what I spent to get the job. Imagine that.
Well,
who else in 100 years could make that statement?
No, and not in a lot of places, but it's now with the way that the way that it costs now. Like, if you're going up against a $4 million PAC in a congressional race, and you're a grassroots candidate, it's David and Goliath.
Certainly it is. It was David and Goliath for me too.
Well, yeah. I think you're right, and I think you bring up an interesting kind of concept here that I've thought about for a while now too, of how you can kind of fight back against a system like that. And I think the best way to do it first is we need to kind of, the long focus is changing federal government and changing federal politics. But the short-term focus, I think, for a lot of people that really want to change things is focus first on your local and state elections. Focus first on mayor, city council, things like that.
How do you know?
Because then
How is it us?
Wait, what?
No, our side got scrambled for a second.
We got scrambled for a second.
Yes.
That's okay.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's really good if you get people out to focus on local elections first, because if you can get on your city council and win that seat, and you don't have to spend that much money to do it. It's mostly just expending the energy of shoe leather and putting your resources and your good ideas out there. and door knocking. If you can start on a city level,
I do it,
and then you can take that momentum from city and then build that into then state, then maybe federal and things like that. But I think if you can change the way this country moves at the bottom first, rather than just focusing on the American Idol sideshow that is the top, then you could see a lot more change directly right away, and you get that groundswell. Because always remember, the head of the snake, if you get rid of the body, the head will die.
You know what the whole problem is, though, people? We got the wrong kind of government.
Yeah,
we do.
No. Yeah, here we go. I go get you going. Now my son's laughing because he knows where I'm going.
I know him too well.
What you need is benevolent dictator.
That's what we have. What
No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. Benevolent. Wait a minute. Hear me out. Benevolent dictator. Now, the key to that is this. Number one, you got to make sure he stays benevolent.
Okay. Well,
Number two, you got to put term limits on. You can only be benevolent dictator for whatever term limits you decide. See, because then you could come in, like you say, you made me benevolent dictator and let's say we do it like Mexico. Mexico, it's 1 6-year term for president. There's no re-election in Mexico. If you win the presidency, I think it's better. If you win the presidency in Mexico, you got 6 years to do your thing, no re-election, and you're on your way. Now, 1 year as 6-year benevolent dictator. Number one, you got to make sure he's benevolent. And number two, keep the term limits on. Because as benevolent dictator, you could do everything and fix everything. But the key is who could be that? And who wouldn't get corrupted by the power of being a dictator? I'm having fun with you and pulling your leg in case you don't know it.
No, I do. But like I've said many times to people, what we live in is a benevolent oligarchy because, and it's really only benevolent for some people.
Exactly.
It's not like it's truly benevolent, but we have this appearance. We have an illusion of a democracy and of a choice. And that's what keeps it going, is this facade that we actually.
But it's only a delusion because we've allowed it to become that way. We, the people, have been lazy. Let's call it like it is. And I can say that. You know why I can say that? For God's sake, 50% of the people generally don't even vote.
True.
Now, I don't care. There's no excuse. Don't give me that rag ass that, I got no candidate to choose. Baloney. Then write one in. The point is, when only 50% or at a good year, 60, Minnesota and Maine usually lead the nation in voter turnout. We have a constant battle between our two states of who's going to win the voter turnout between Minnesota and Maine. And in Minnesota, we traditionally have large voter turnouts. The year I ran for governor, it was 10% higher than what they predicted, which they attributed to me, that I brought 10% more people to the polls because of my candidacy that would have not gone otherwise. And we were still at only 60%. And I look at that and go, 4 out of 10 people don't even vote.
Yeah.
Well, then, there's an old saying, if you don't vote, don't bitch.
Well, a lot of people like to bitch, but they also don't like to get mobile. Now, I will ask you.
I vote and bitch.
Yeah, well.
There you go.
Good. If you vote, you got a right to bitch. As long as you vote, you got a right to bitch. But if you don't vote, what right do you have to bitch?
Jesse, you're looking around right now at everything that's going on.
Yep.
This opening, as far as we can tell, is that whoever is going to really step up, and let's be honest, the biggest flaw in our presidency in this country is how we do handle foreign policy. It is an absolute nightmare on so many levels. And what's happening right now in Gaza is just emblematic of all the failures that we've had around the world. But there is an opening right now for somebody who is going to step up. Biden sure shit ain't doing it. Trump is not going to do it either. RFK cannot get his head straight on this particular issue. Dr. West does not have any type of a presidential infrastructure. You once said that the way you would run for president is if there was ballot access. Well, as tried as it may be, there would be ballot access with the Libertarian Party. I would ask you if there is any consideration, because I do think that there is an opening right now. This country is so desperate.
We need an
another lane.
We need anti-war.
For something that isn't the same bullshit that we have been sold for so goddamn long. The opening is right there. They're like saying, hey, listen, if you get this issue right on Israel-Palestine, you could.
I think that if somebody were to step up and get right on this, and also on Ukraine.
Yes.
And really kind of handle those two issues, that would be a deal breaker for everybody else in this race.
Because that is the one thing that I will say. There's a lot of things I vehemently disagree with the Libertarian platform on. They've got way too much of that kill or be killed mindset about how you run an economy. However, I do think that you would infuse a much different approach, especially when it comes to civil liberties and healthcare. But when it comes to what is absolutely essential in terms of how we better this country right now, because we are suffering like nobody's business. The audacity of this particular administration, who wants to sell this bullshit that we're actually in a good economy right now, is absolutely amazing. And yet at the same time, our foreign policy is twice as bad. So have you given additional thought to whether or not you would potentially run on the Libertarian ticket? And if you did, I think there would be millions of people that would line up to support you, because right now, people really want another path. And you are somebody with a hell of a lot of credibility that could bring that to the table.
Yeah, the only problem is that I would be the youngster.
That's a good thing.
No, I would be the youngster, and I say that being a little tongue-in-cheek. I think I'm too old at this point. Now, I would tell you, if I was 50 right now, I'm all in. But, I'm 72 now, and I've got personal issues in my life that, require at this age that you don't know if you, and in a job like that, you got to be 100% in.
Yeah.
You can't be 99.9% in. You got to be all the way. And you got to be all the way into the campaigning, which means I would have to go out a year from now, 365 days, and campaign my ass off, and I'm liable to be dead by the time the election would get here. I don't know. I feel good. I'm healthy that way, but I've got other personal issues in my life that I've been married now. It'll be 50 years coming up here in another year or so. And my wife has certain issues, and we're a partnership. And people fail to realize running for office, what it requires of your family.
I do know this.
And so I would like people to also consider that. And it isn't that you're selfish or you don't want. I look at it this way. They always write me up as that, he was this political nothing that won the governor of Minnesota and shocked the world. No, not true. I was mayor of the 6th largest city in Minnesota for 4 years, from 1990 to 94. And that's truly where you learn politics, is at the grassroots mayoral level, where every week you chair a city council meeting. And I was the 6th largest city in the state. So you're not talking about, little podunk town. This was a major 6th largest city in Minnesota. You're in a council meeting every Monday, and you're staring your constituents eye to eye. So when people say I was some government novice, baloney. I had 6 years in the United States Navy, 4 years as a mayor, and then 4 years as a governor. That's 14 years of public service. And here's one you'll like. I came out and said that, and here's a position I have, there should not be billionaires. You know why? Do you know why I say that?
It's failed.
Nobody works hard enough.
No.
You cannot tell me someone works hard enough to earn $1 billion.
No, their servants work that hard.
Wait. Here's my argument. The 2 hardest jobs I had in my life. My first was going through Navy SEAL training. I challenge any billionaire to go through what I did physically. And you know how much? No, you know how much I was making.
Not much.
Like today, people come up to me. I'm a Vietnam vet. And you get all these people come up and thank you for your service. Well, it's shallow to me because when I needed the thanking, they weren't there. We got blamed. The Vietnam vet. So they thank me today. You know what I say to them today when they thank me? I go, oh, you don't have to thank me. I didn't do it for patriotism. I said, I did it for the money. I'm glad I got a laugh out of you guys. No, you know, when I went through Navy SEAL training, you know how much money I was making?
I would think.
Venture a guess.
Minimum wage, if that.
Oh, no, there ain't minimum wage because you're talking the military. This is socialism.
Oh.
Yeah,
you don't go by no capitalist minimum wage BS. This is pure, unadulterated socialism, which we use.
It's true.
You know, it's a socialist system that protects our capitalist system. Right to the T. You know how much I was making going through Navy SEAL training? $62 every 2 weeks, $124 a month. Now you tell me one billionaire that worked harder than I was. Now, let's go to a regular job because that's considered service. The toughest regular job I ever had was right before I went in the Navy. I got hired by the Minnesota State Highway Department, bridge crew labor, and you know what I did for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week? Ran the 75-pound jackhammer breaking up concrete on bridges. You're going to tell me some billionaire was working harder than I was? You're going to say this billionaire was sweating and toiling more than I was with a 75-pound jackhammer 10 hours a day? And I was making probably a little more than minimum wage because you were with the state highway department. But I bet I wasn't making $5 an hour. I can't remember back that far.
But the economic system has become a complete failure for the average person in this country. And the one person who is running for president right now, who is stating what is necessary, is RFK. And the reason I mention him
is who?
RFK. And the reason I mention him is because he has been very clear about the fact that Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street are going to own over 60% of the single-family homes in this country by the end of the decade. The ability to actually build any type of generational wealth is going to be completely impossible for a almost universal for working people in this country. It is simply going to go away. I don't know how much he can be moved on the issue of Israel, but the current poll numbers suggest that this country is ready for something other than the two major parties in this country. Do you think that there's any chance that RFK could potentially be moved on some of these issues and become that trailblazing candidate that we desperately need right now?
Well, unfortunately, it was all set up to happen, and it got canceled. RFK called me a couple weeks ago. He was coming to Minnesota, and he wanted to meet with me, and we were going to spend 2 days together so that I can get him off of this vaccine bullshit and start getting him to truly campaign on something that could win him the presidency, which ain't vaccines.
No.
And anyway, though, RFK and I were going to meet, and unfortunately, he called me the day before and said he had a cancellation and a change of plans, so he didn't come to Minnesota yet. But let me ask you this. Did you guys ever read the book I wrote called Don't Start the Revolution Without Me?
No, I haven't read that one.
Well, I think you should. And the reason you should is this. It was the book I wrote right after getting out of office, and I'm traveling to my home off the grid in the Baja. And my wife and I both contributed to this book. And in the end of the book, I wrote all nonfiction until the last chapter. And this was a book I wrote back in 2004 after leaving office. The last chapter, I wrote fiction. You know what the last chapter was? Wait till you hear this. And this is 2004. nearly 20 years ago. The last chapter was I team up with RFK Jr. and we run for president, only I'm the president, he's the VP, and I get assassinated.
Interesting.
Wow.
And I wrote that book 20 years ago, going, and Dick Russell, my co-writer, I said, Dick, I want to do something strange with this book. He goes, what do you want to do? I said, the last chapter, without telling nobody, I want to write completely fiction. Well, that last chapter, if I look at it today, might not be fiction now.
If he called you,
only the difference would be RFK'd be on the top and I'd be the VP.
if RFK offered you the VP spot, would you take it?
I would give it serious consideration. Certainly, I won't tell you right now yes or no, because it would depend on my personal life.
Yeah,
and that is the commitment I told you about moments ago. You know, would I want to commit myself at age 72 for 1 year of hell? And then the worst part would be, and then possibly the worst part would be this:
winning.
Yeah. And then I'd have to do it for 4 years.
That's what I said today. I kept tweeting, and I'm like, what if we win? Like, first of all, how would you, I don't even know, there are not enough showers in a day for me to deal with some of those people. You know what I mean? Like, that is just, it's amazing.
Yeah, but wait a minute. You got to remember something. You got to, you know, we just finished with the president. Who reminds me greatly of a dear friend of mine who passed away, who did a phenomenal film called years in the 70s called The Groove Tube. Oh, you guys need to see The Groove Tube and see Richard Belzer's portrayal of the president. You got Donald Trump, man. Richard Belzer did Donald Trump 20 years before Trump was president.
Let me explain something to you, Mr. Ventura. I'm going to explain. Listen, this is very important. I approached you after you won your governorship, and you totally haven't reciprocated. I asked you for your support. You wouldn't give it back to me. I don't appreciate that. But I'm going to offer you an opportunity of a lifetime. Do not go with RFK. He's a total freaking loser. I am offering you the VP spot on my ticket, and believe me, you're going to want to take it. There you go.
No, I don't think Donnie will be offering me that spot. I did a piece.
He would definitely be shitting a brick if RFK made you his VP.
Yes.
Well, I did a thing on Substack where I compared Trump to Manson.
That's an interesting comparison.
Look at it.
He has that kind of power.
They're very. What he did on January 6th is almost identical to what Manson did on August 8th, 1969, sending his followers out, waiting for him to come back. And here's the scary part: the exact same number of deaths the first night.
Really?
Yes, 5 people died.
That's interesting.
Very interesting.
Oh God, the comparisons are eerie. And I get it on Substack. Pull it up on Substack and read it.
That's our shameless plug for the afternoon too.
Yeah.
Don't forget to check out Die First Then Quit, where you can get all these wonderful tidbits from Jesse and myself. And I think actually, Dad, you brought up an interesting point, and I get the passion of where you guys are coming from in terms of like wanting someone like Jesse or other people to run, or RFK, Cornel West. But I think there's the element that we're missing here too is we need youth in office.
Yes.
We keep falling back to people who are 69, 72. I mean, what, Biden's 105?
Because the choices you got, Ty, are old.
Right.
69's young.
And I know. And as someone who just turned 44, I would love to see more candidates, especially for higher office, especially for president. We need youth again, because we are dealing with issues today that I think, and no offense, Dad, I love you to death, but we are dealing with issues today that we don't need a baby boomer perspective on anymore. We need a Gen X, a millennial perspective on to bring us into the 21st century, namely so we can let the boomers retire and let them let them ride off into the sunset.
No, the boomers are going to go kicking and screaming. We're running a hospice in Congress, but have you considered running? Because you're talking about, I know the young people, but believe it or not, when it comes to like politics, your age is the young people. Like, yeah, there's a few really younger outliers, but like you would definitely be on the you're on the younger end of the spectrum for sure. Like, have you considered this?
And let me inject something here. You don't want anybody much younger than 44. Because there is something called life experience.
See, and this is what
and I would tell people the best age we could have for a president right now 55. In the 50s.
50s.
A 50-year-old, someone who's in his mid-50s. Because I'm 72 and I can think back, when you're 40, you're not as savvy as you are when you get in the mid-50s. Mid-50s, you've just about seen it all. There isn't a whole lot that you ain't seen by then. So I would tell you, we need to look for presidents who are. John Kennedy was a rarity. He was in his 40s. And he, but it doesn't say that, you know why John Kennedy's our greatest president of all time?
Because he stood up to the deep state and got dead?
No, it's simpler. John Kennedy is the greatest president of all time because they allowed him to serve the least.
Oh.
They killed him. They killed him before he had even served one term.
Shows you how dangerous he was.
Yes.
So, Ty, I think you would be really great in public office. I mean, like, if you must have considered this.
It's interesting for all my life, or a good portion of my life, I've spent a lot of time in front of a camera and a lot of time speaking out and things like that. It's a hard ask because, as great and amazing as it was seeing what my father was able to accomplish going through those 4 years of office and governor, it's a huge ask to do that, especially for me. I don't particularly like to be in front of the camera. It's not something that I aspire to be. I've never aspired to be that. I've kind of fallen into that with aspects of my life and things like that. And it's great to educate people the way I've been able to have that ability to do and to make people think. It would take the really interesting set of circumstances for me to run for office right now, and I can't get too deep into it because we're very close, and I'll let you know when the time comes, I promise. But we have some other major things happening in the Venturas right now that don't necessarily have to do with politics. And I will promise to let you guys know when those happen. So after I can get that boulder moved up the hill, then maybe I'll circle back around and think about running for office. But let me just get that boulder up the hill first. And trust me, it's a boulder that needs to be moved up that hill, and it's going to be a really incredible thing, I think, when the time comes for us to announce that. So definitely stay tuned for that.
Absolutely.
Let me throw something to you. You're hinting at me to go with the libertarians, right? Right.
Yeah.
And I have all the respect in the world for the libertarians, but I also have butted heads with them. Because I remember the time I was governor and I was giving a speech on transportation, and the libertarians started to boo me.
Right.
So I stopped my speech and I looked at them and I said, "You don't think the government should be involved in transportation?" They all said no. And I looked at them and said, "Well, how'd you get here today?"
Yeah.
I said, "You guys, I love your libertarian and liberty attitude, but in a civilized society, and if the society's civilized, you have to have government." I said, "How could you not with transportation? If all the roads were private, you'd have a toll every 50 feet.
Yes.
How could you go anywhere? You couldn't."
Yeah.
And so I always felt the libertarians lost it a little bit on something called common sense.
They've taken it to the extreme.
Yeah, you can take it to an extreme that in a civilized society, you have to have some sort of government. Otherwise, it's not going to be civilized.
And you also need candidates to realize, too, and this is a good message for a lot of candidates, you need candidates to understand that you have to have your set of core values that gets you elected from the people that are truly behind you, whether that's a core value that's in alignment with a party or you're an independent or whatever. You have your core values that gathers the people. But you also have to remember is that once you are in office, you're not just governing that group of people that got you elected. You have to govern the people that voted against you as well.
That's right.
And I think too many today, and this isn't about, compromise or sacrificing your morals or what you believe in politically, but you have to understand is you have to govern a whole of people, meaning that there might not be people, you got to convince the people who didn't vote for you why it's a good idea now that you're in office that you're going to enact this change, whether it be, with healthcare or something of this nature or foreign policy or whatever it might be. You have to remember that it's now you're a leader for everybody. And that doesn't mean compromise. It doesn't mean compromising who you are morally, but it does mean that you actually have to find the route, right? Like, you got to find the route to make as many people understand where you're coming from and also see the goodness of your ideas. But at the same time, you have to be willing to sacrifice certain of your ideas just to, make the world a little bit better in the long run.
Hey, Ty, how about this? Ty, how about this? We can keep working together. I'll run as the Libertarian and win the presidency, and you can run for Senate in Minnesota, and we'll both go out there.
That's that'll work for me. You guys really do. We've said often that if you're going to look at any place of the country where there may be a sliver of the Democratic Party doing something decent, it's in a state like Minnesota. Overall, the party is a disaster, especially at the federal level. But at the state level, in some places, they have the right idea about what governing of, by, and for the people is about. We need a lot more of that across the country right now. And I think it isn't necessarily that we want to seek out people that are of a certain age from, let's say, the boomer generation. But I do think, like both of you have alluded to, and as Jen obviously experienced running against Wasserman Schultz for Congress, this is a very, very hard task. Just to run, forget even getting into the position of power and then what comes after that fact. And you know what? You are living, breathing proof of that, because you easily would have run re-election if you decided to go a second time and you decided, you know what? This shit's fucking hard.
No. Hey, do you want to know the real reason? One of the major real reasons I didn't run again?
Sure.
Yeah.
The money.
Yeah.
No, let me explain when I say that. I was governor, and I'm the highest paid person in government in Minnesota. I was getting $120,000 a year, right? Now you still got to pay taxes, right?
Yeah.
Now here's something you need to know about. You know that governor's vehicle that they drive me around in every day for 4 years? Yeah, that mileage to and from the Capitol is deducted from my paycheck. Interesting, huh? So you know what I did? I said to them, okay, how about if I'll drive my private car to the Capitol? I'll then switch to the governor's car, drive that all day long, and at the end of the day, get in my private car and go home. Then you won't deduct nothing from my check. Public safety comes in. You can't do that. Why? Because the weapons, the radio, and all your protection is in the governor's vehicle. You have to use the governor's car. So it's a catch-22. They put you in the car and then charge you for it. It doesn't, wait a minute, it don't end there. Tyrel's involved in the next one a little bit. You know that big mansion they let you live in?
Yes, the governor's mansion.
Yeah. Well, every meal that me and my family ate there is deducted from my paycheck.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So let me explain to you, at the end of the day, and when taxes were out, vehicle deducted, meals deducted, I was being governor of the state of Minnesota for about $50,000 a year. Now, you got corruption in government, right? You know how to get rid of it?
Pay the people more
money.
Pay
the people, exactly. I was in charge of, I think, a $16 billion budget. I'm the CEO, and I'm clearing $50,000 a year as the CEO of $16 billion. What would I be making in the private sector?
But that's the whole point.
I understand that. All right, let me give you another example. The First Lady. I got in trouble because I came out and said First Lady should be paid.
Yeah,
why? because she manages the governor's residence, which has 8 employees. Name me another building manager that works for free. And she has a full-time assistant who gets paid $70,000 a year to be her assistant, and the first lady gets 0. You talk about sexism.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how they get first ladies to work for free. They don't
spouses.
They don't get any payment for what they have to do. They represent the state of Minnesota. They manage a building for the state of Minnesota, and they have employees that they head up, and they get paid. And their personal assistant makes $70,000 a year, and the first lady makes nothing.
You know, it goes to that element of the, you know, when you see these people who have been in office, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is a good example, but like, and all these others who just keep running and winning and running and winning, and they have these, you know, 20, 30-year careers at some point. I mean, you know, Dianne Feinstein would have died in office. You know, it's like, you know, when you see that happen, you have to wonder, when you're someone like Jesse Ventura, who's not taking PAC money, who's not, you know, greasing the wheels so he can then get some high-level C-suite job in the executive sector after he's done because he did all these favors for big corporations and things like that while they're in office. If you're an honest person in there just trying to do right, you a lot of times can't afford to work the job. I mean, just to be a senator in the U.S. Congress right now, D.C. is wildly expensive to live in. I lived there for 8 years.
Do you know how bad
to maintain
it was?
2 residences between, okay, I have to live in D.C. and then I also have to live in my home state, my home district. I have to have offices in both and maintain all of that. It's a wildly expensive job, so they almost price the average citizen out of being able to even hold the job unless you join one of the 2 parties, and then you're beholden to that party, and then you have to spend your first year in the House or the Senate basically on the phone fundraising for the party. You know, so it's a terrible system in that sense. But I still believe that you can change that system if you start at the mayor state level and then just, you know, take the legs out from under the beast.
That's why I love the current governor of Minnesota, Democrat Governor Walz. This guy's a school teacher. So is his wife. And you know what he told me? He said he was a congressman. He used to live in his congressional office because he couldn't afford an apartment.
I believe it.
And he would shower and all that in the congressional place and all that because he had to maintain his home back here and one out in D.C. and he couldn't afford to. And see, and when you've got people elected and it stresses them so badly financially, how susceptible then do they become on corruption? You know, when somebody comes along and says, hey, you know, we could take care of you. All you got to do is vote this way or do this favor. See, if we pay the people higher wages to do these jobs, believe it or not, it would eliminate the possibility of people looking for corruption then to survive. Like I said, I was being governor for $50,000 a year. I have to tell you, honestly, I have a lifestyle that requires more money than that.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. Can we at least then say, maybe we should get rid of the insider trading? Maybe we shouldn't allow Congress people to be making a fortune on all of these things that, you know, are happening.
There's plenty of things we could do. Pay them a decent salary and don't let them do any of that stuff. You know, if you pay somebody a decent, I mean, shouldn't the governor of Minnesota be making $500,000?
Most governors,
percentage or proportionate to the size of the budget of the state, whatever that or whatever the cost.
Well, I mean, he's in charge of a $16 billion budget.
Right.
Well, it's also
proportionate to the size of the company.
Yeah, it's incentivizing for more of your average. What you need right now is less professional politicians, and you need more of your average citizens with real world experience and what the country's supposed to, what a democratic republic is supposed to be.
But here's another thing to remember. You always hear these arguments. Oh, elect John Johnson. He's a businessman. He'll come in and he's going to run the government like a business. That's what we want. And they all cheer and they elect him. Well, who was the last guy who never held a job, a elected position, and became our president?
Who was a
Trump.
businessman. Yes.
He was a businessman.
Yes.
Had no experience in government whatsoever, and we put him in the highest office in the land. Now, here's my argument. It's like I've had people come up to me and say they want The Rock to run, Dwayne Johnson.
Right.
He's a handsome guy. He's good looking. He's young. He's, what a beautiful president The Rock could make. Well, I've said maybe he could. He's obviously good. He's created a career for himself. He's wealthy as hell today. He owns production companies. He's doing great. But I always say, why don't you do this? Have The Rock go out and get elected mayor somewhere and let him serve 4 years of experience in the public sector, then run him. Because the last guy that had no experience to me was a disaster.
Well, and also you can't put a business. Go ahead.
Well, and the thing is this, people got to understand, in business, it's for profit. That's what these people, the brain is, how do we make profit?
Yeah.
They need to understand government is not for profit. Government is for providing services. And there's a huge difference between providing services and for profit. And that's why you can't just take a for profit guy and stick him into a service oriented industry. It would be like making someone a general in the military who had no military experience.
You know, when people think of you and they think of everything you've accomplished in your career, and your most noted line, of course, was, "I ain't got time to bleed." But the truth is, the whole concept of that line is to basically say, I don't have time for bullshit. Like, I've only got time to get I have a task here, and you were basically living out your career as a Navy SEAL in that film by basically saying, listen, we have a job to do. I'm going to do the fucking job. Don't distract me. This is the end of the discussion.
Wait a minute. I don't think that much went into it. I ain't got time to bleed like, no, I'm having fun with this because
he's into it. I saw
no. I ain't got time. You know why the I ain't got time to bleed line was so important?
No.
You know why it was so important?
Why?
Here's the real reason. Number one, we just got through with this massive display of violence, right? So film-wise, you've got to have a comedic break. Am I right, Tyrel?
Yes.
Yeah. You've just had this intense action. Now you've got to have a comedic break. The other reason that was so important is this. Richard Chavez, the actor with me, Pancho, and myself, we were the only two legitimate veterans. And we wanted that scene together. Because that was the only lines really Richard and I had, other than when I offered him the tobacco in the chopper. but other than that, that's why Richard and I wanted that scene so bad, because Richard had served in the Army, I had served in the Navy. We were the only two legitimate veterans in the movie, and that's why the I ain't got time to bleed. It ain't the line that's important. It's the fact that two veterans had that scene together.
That's cool to know. I saw all that stuff because I'm an only child and my dad was into all that stuff. So as a girl, I went and saw all of it. I'm not into it now though. It's so not my genre.
No,
I don't want to watch people fighting and bleeding. It's just not my thing. It's just
hard
not
to do.
my thing.
I think that the other thing.
Yeah, but you have to remember something. They think this is a sci-fi.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what's
Predator
interesting.
Sci-fi.
What's interesting about Predator too is that, and John McTiernan, the director, he's a very brilliant and sly director.
Yes.
He fought and got that sequence in that after Jesse dies, they just mow down the forest with every weapon known to man, and just shot 4,000 rounds, and he wanted that sequence in there actually as a commentary against gun violence, in saying that here you have the greatest killers that the military war machine could produce with all of the best technology and all of this. They expunge all of it to kill this, this threat, and it hits nothing. Meaning you can have all the great weaponry, you can have all of this, but at the end of the day, it doesn't save your life. it's not, all of that is not. And he was making kind of a very subtle political statement within an action movie that you don't see very often.
No.
Of kind of showing the fallacy of the big gun attitude.
And it was so big. Al Desario, the special effects guy, it took 1 week just to wire up that scene. And they ran 7 cameras on that scene because they knew they were only going to get one shot at it, and they wanted it covered from 7 different angles.
All to subtly tell the audience to make a comment about the fetishization of guns and military.
Richard comes back and goes, "We hit nothing."
Yeah. And McTiernan's brilliant that way, where he kind of slides in these subtle little political kind of comments on things.
But it is true, because people think that if more guns and more police and all of that is the answer. And I say, if having all of that made us safer, we'd be the safest country in the world. Like, there's no more to have, which is, I'm going to be up at Cop City protesting this on next week at the thing in Atlanta, because that's not the answer.
And it brings
by the way, you guys need my new position on the Second Amendment.
You have a new position on the Second Amendment?
Well, I've always been a huge supporter of the Second Amendment. I believe in it. It was caused by the British when they used to come here and occupy us and take all our stuff, and that required us to be able to repel them, when we were a colony, going back to the colonialism. But here's my new position. I believe anybody should be able to own their weapons and pretend they're Rambo and do all that stuff, as long as they're on their own private property.
That's what I say.
Sit on your private property, put your headband on, pretend you're Donald Trump, pretend you're Rambo, pretend all that stuff. You can run around with your AR-15. You can do all that as long as you're at home on your own private property. Now, here's what you do with the guns. Why it seems so simple to me why we can't treat a gun like a car.
Well, they'll argue because you
wait a minute. You have to license your car. You have to have a license to drive your car. Now, you can drive a car on private property with no license. You can drive it all over on private property, and you don't need a license. You don't need nothing on the car or you're on private property. But the minute you go out on the public road, the car must be licensed and you must be licensed. And here comes the big one. And require all gun owners that take weapons off their private property, they must be insured.
I say the same thing. I'm like, you could have all, and I also am okay with people transporting weapons. To go to ranges.
And you know what the insurance will do for it? Here's what insurance will accomplish. By making everyone have to be required to be insured, the insurance companies will then do the background checks. Because they're not going to insure somebody that they would be a danger to them having to fork out huge amounts of money.
Yeah, I agree. If you're going to be walking around in public, then that is when your rights are now impeding on my rights. So at that point where I agree, I think if you want to
treat it like a car.
Yeah.
You can't drive a car unless the car is licensed, unless you are licensed to drive that car, and you have to have insurance.
And you have to take tests. You have to take a test to make sure that you maintain that license over and over again to show that you can handle that weapon responsibly.
It fully fulfills the Second Amendment. You can own all your weapons. You can sit and clean them every night on your doorstep, and you can put your headband on and, pretend you're Rambo. You can do all that, and no one will get hurt. But the minute you leave your private property, the weapon must be licensed, you must be licensed, and there must be insurance.
Yeah.
Ta-da!
And then you're automatically going to have registrations and background checks, because otherwise you won't be able to.
Insurance companies will do it.
Yeah.
Because the first thing the insurance company is going to want is to know who you are. They're going to be sending you out there with a weapon.
Yeah.
I think they're going to want to know who you are.
We know people will carry guns without that, because there's always people that do it.
Of course.
Regardless. But I think that is that's the sort of societal message.
But now you could arrest them. Now you could arrest them.
Yeah, I don't believe, I mean, like, to me, this whole idea of like just walking around brandishing firearms, it's how anybody thinks that somehow makes us safer. Like, is it, and they try to tell us, oh, well, if the good guys have guns, then we're safer. But then we see at Uvalde a whole bunch of cops just standing around.
Let me add this, though. Here's a mistake they make, and I run into it. I have legit license conceal and carry, right?
Yeah.
Fully, and I need it. I get a death threat a week still.
Yeah.
I got it as governor, and I still get them today. But here's a mistake they make. You'll walk into places where they have these signs, no guns allowed.
Yeah.
That's a big mistake, because what you're doing then, you're asking the legitimate license conceal and carry law-abiding person to separate himself from his weapon. You're now going to have him leave it in the car and go into this establishment. Well, if a criminal comes along and steals his car, now you've got a criminal with a stolen car with a weapon in it. So see, they're cutting their nose off to spite their face. Legitimate conceal and carry licensed people are not a threat. We are not threats. And so don't disarm us. Do not disarm us and separate us from our weapons. That's the dumbest thing you can do, is separate someone from their weapon.
It was very interesting when we were doing the show Watching the Hawks. Myself and my co-host Tabitha, we traveled to Australia to examine the differences between U.S. gun laws and U.S. gun culture compared to Australian gun laws and Australian gun culture. And one of the interesting things that we came across, and we were in Australia, you know, they had that mass shooting that took place, and then they really went into a lockdown in terms of like gun ownership and things like that. And now you can have a weapon, but you have to license it. You got to transport. You can only use it as at a gun club, or if you're on your own private property, that kind of thing. But what was really fascinating to me, and it kind of gets back to what we were talking about earlier, of like this kind of culture of fear and revenge that we definitely are wallowing here in the U.S. on. And I don't know, maybe it's changed because this is a few years ago as an Australian, but when we brought up, you know, why do you own a gun to gun owners in Australia? You know, what are their reasons? One of the lowest things on that list was personal safety. Most gun owners in Australia looked at it as, I hunt and I use it for sport shooting. You know, I don't really think about needing a weapon to keep myself safe. Now, that's different when you're in a situation like my dad, who's, you know, a public figure who's gotten death threats, who speaks out, and there's been very legitimate people that have tried to hurt him tragically over the years. You know, so you can understand it for figures like that. But for your average citizen, this kind of weird culture idea that we have that somehow around every single corner that we walk is someone waiting to attack us and hurt us, and that we need to be like the Wild West again, where we're all packing 6-shooters to be safe, is absolutely ridiculous. Because Australia and the US weirdly have very similar histories.
Yep.
You know, they were both British colonies. In Australia's case, they're a penal colony, but they're both British colonies. They both had their weird manifest destiny. We're going to fuck over the indigenous people and kill a bunch of indigenous people and do all that. We very similar paths in history. But their attitude about weapons is completely different than ours. Yet very similar upbringing as a country, for lack of a better term. And I think that's where you get this weird mentality in the US, where we have just so much fear baked in our system.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
I can answer it.
Yeah, well,
I can answer it. Back in 1971, they didn't get Dirty Harry
to scare the shit out of us. Yeah.
Speaking of somebody who could have run for president and probably won, you know, he was mayor of Carmel, California, and you know, assumingly, I mean, you know, Clint maybe at one time may have thought about it, but yeah, we do have to evolve in terms of always looking for, you know, the famous person or the noted person who's going to go out and run for office. You guys have all made, I mean, again, it's always a pleasure to have you both on. But the points that I'm made here today is so crystal clear that electoral politics is one very small part of this equation. If you are not involved at the local level in your community, then like you said, don't be being a keyboard warrior doesn't do anything. And we've got a shit ton of them in this country. People all having it's like an asshole. Everyone's got one, and everyone's got that opinion that they feel that they must share. But you know what I've noticed helping manage Jen's social media over the past several years It's the same damn people. The echo chamber is very, very small. It is not as many as you think. You go up to the average person, yes, they may have heard of Jesse Ventura, but they are not obsessed with this 24/7 like a lot of people are. The problem is that we're looking at the absolute crumbling of our country in real time, and we're desperately trying to figure out how to save it because most people are not aware that this whole thing is completely collapsing. The whole idea of your dollar not having value, the idea that you can't own a home, much less take a vacation, all of these things that have changed so significantly. Yet at the same time, I feel that, especially with what's going on right now in Israel, Palestine, is that we are crossing that Rubicon, that there is a significant change that is coming to this country. If you ultimately decide to become RFK's VP, if that is offered to you, I think that that is the best thing that could possibly happen to him, because if anybody could ever check him in a way that he needs to be checked, you're the person who could do it. Because he's not listening to anybody else, but you are the type of person that if you told him that if you want to become the leader of the free world and really change this country for the better, you have that gravitas, that experience, that know-how that I do think he would listen to. And that is what I have to say.
The thing too, and I say this on a dead serious note, you're going to laugh at it, but I say it dead serious. I would be his best insurance policy too.
I can't disagree with
No, and when I say that is this.
I know, and I am concerned.
No. Let me finish. What I say that is this. They killed Jack Kennedy. They killed his father. You think if it looks like RFK is going to win, he ain't going to get assassinated? That's why he needs me. Because if they kill him, they get me. That's worse. They're better off with him than they are with me. That's why RFK needs me as his running mate. It's because I'm his best insurance policy. Because they're gonna look at it and say, well, if we do win RFK, we get Jesse Ventura. That's worse.
Tyrel, please plug the Substack so everybody who wants to check out your work, we definitely want to share it. And again, you guys are. It's an open invitation. Anytime.
Thank you. It's always fun being on here. Appreciate it. Anytime you can expand your mind and talk like you guys do, it's good for everybody involved listening and all that. And let's get a candidate. Let's get a president.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
No, you can definitely check us all out. Obviously, Jesse has a social media on X, Twitter, or whatever the hell it's being called now, and all of that at Facebook, all of that. But most importantly, you can check out all of Jesse's political viewpoints, fun things, cultural things, and some of the big projects that we have coming up in the works that you're going to see in 2024. You're going to see launched and through his Substack page, which is called Die First Then Quit. So definitely check out Jesse there, and much love to Substack, one of the good companies that doesn't censor, allows a lot of different voices to be heard on Substack, whether you agree with them or not. They allow you to hear everything. Don't tell Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Well, that's why we're demonetized. She had us demonetized, and so we are. I think we're appealing it this month, right? Like we can appeal.
Actually, next week we're supposed to be able to get back.
I'm not hopeful. And ever since we got demonetized, all I've basically been talking about is Israel. So I don't foresee a lot of monetization.
I have a joke that says the second we get it back, we're going to lose it again. So don't even enjoy it for like.
And you just got to talk about how great Hillary Clinton is, and you'll be fine. Just 5 minutes a week.
Hey, if you guys legitimately want me with RFK, get a hold of them.
I have sent him email. I want him to. I offered after he was so rudely spoken to by my congressional representative. I sent him an email basically apologizing on behalf of our district for her disgusting behavior. But I'd love for him to come on, and I would totally love to talk with him about Israel and Palestine and hook him up with some of the leaders from Jewish Voice for Peace and like some of the rabbis that actually I just think he's very misguided on this. And that maybe I don't want to do a gotcha. I was just hoping, but we can't seem to get his attention.
Ty, I'll send you contact information. I know top people in his campaign, so we'll talk.
Well, you guys.
I know some of them too. Dennis Kucinich.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Mr. Kucinich is no longer his campaign manager, and I think a lot of that has to do with his and a lot of that had to do with his position on Israel. That was a big that was a completely crossing the line. Dennis Kucinich was as anti-war as anybody. He basically said, "Look, he values, as Jen likes to say, he values the rear end of Rabbi Shmuley more than he values the intellect and support."
It's a tuchus. I say that RFK's got his head up Rabbi Shmuley's tuchus.
So he's going to have to evolve on that before he ever thinks he's going to become president, because you are clearly missing the moment if you don't recognize that issue's changing significantly. But
I guess I'll be stuck with the libertarians then. I'll be the top of it. Who should I get for a running mate?
You know what? Right now, what matters most is that there's somebody who's going to speak truth to power unequivocally. Not this mealy mouth.
No, you guys, come on, give me. If I became the libertarian, let's have fun here for a second. Who would I get for a running mate?
That I don't know, but I do have a really good Secretary of State recommendation, as I have insisted for many years that Dolly Parton would absolutely be the absolute best Secretary of State. I cannot think of
Dolly Parton.
Oh yes,
I agree. Actually, Dolly's incredible.
Her going over and dealing with Vladimir Putin. He'd be eating out of her little nails, her little candy nails.
Come on now, Dolly.
Let me tell you something about that. She's been running an empire larger than Trump could ever friggin' dream of. She is self-made. She has handled her own. But if anybody's capable of being in an executive office, it's her. But
and I give Dolly a lot of credit too, because they were going to try to build her a statue, I think, in her hometown, and she said, "Don't build me a statue. Go and use that money to use that money to feed some people that need food." She's such a giving person. She's an incredible human being.
Can you imagine? They wouldn't be able to. How could anybody be mean to Dolly? First of all, she glows. I've seen her in person. She literally glows like an angel. She's like an angel. I'm telling you. See, I prefer that to let's say the Madeleine Albright approach. Just personal preference.
Or you could go find Franklin Hart down in Brazil.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
to get that 9 to 5 reference that I just.
We'd have to find the Brazilian tribe though that kidnapped him.
To kidnap Franklin Hart from the film 9 to 5. You guys, thank you so much. I have to run.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jesse.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate you both very much.
You saw 9 to 5, right? In the theater? Or no, you could have seen it in the theater. Oh my God, I remember 9 to 5.
What an amazing conversation. My goodness, I thought that the first one was great. This one's twice as
See, Ty didn't think my Dolly Parton suggestion was
I never said that it was.
I think my Dolly Parton suggestion is brilliant.
I think that obviously a lot of people are going to hear about this. Listen, I do think that an RFK Ventura ticket it could actually be a winning ticket. But that all depends on whether or not RFK and his team understand that if you're going to have somebody like Jesse Ventura on your ticket, and let's be honest, it actually is the ticket that makes the most sense. If you want a nation that it has an independent ticket.
Yes, it would be very independent.
This is it. This is, and with all due respect to RFK, Jesse has been through one hell of a life. He's not in a position to be running for president, but as a vice president, to basically just go and sell RFK, to events and things like that. I think he would do fantastic in that position.
He really has to get right on Israel.
He does.
And that's at this point, and that wouldn't have necessarily been the case even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But right now, it's just so in our face that he can't be that.
You can't look at what happened over the weekend and think that you could ever thread the needle on this issue anymore. It's over. Now you have to evolve on the issue. Now, of course, Trump and Biden are not going to evolve because they can't. They are literally attached to the establishment, whether anybody wants to believe that Trump is actually an independent thinker, maybe in some respects, but not when it comes to Israel. And so now you have to look at, is somebody who truly is independent in this moment going to say, all right, you know what the hell? I'm going to have to sacrifice a little bit over here to get a lot more of what's over here.
How about just doing the right thing?
Oh, that's a hard thing to do. I was even going to say,
I just feel like
too much sense.
Like when people, I love when people thank me for my position on something as if I'm doing it as a favor. Thank you for taking the stand. I take the stand because it's the stand I take. It just happens to be you like it, and that's great.
I don't agree with you, Ray. I don't think it's impossible at all. You just have to recognize that we have a corrupted electoral infrastructure.
Are you talking about third party or an independent?
Yeah, in what respect? If you're saying that to some third party or independent.
Yeah, because the fact that RFK's polling numbers are where they are right now is a sign that that's just not true. But it wouldn't necessarily say he's third party. He's independent. So I don't know what you're referencing.
I think that in this moment right now, what we're looking at, and again, this has been an extremely long but very productive show because we've obviously covered a lot of ground. Obviously, Jesse has revealed a lot of stuff. I think that if we are the show that is going to basically make the rounds now, where people are going to be talking about the possibility of an RFK Ventura ticket, that's going to get a lot of people talking, and rightfully so, because you know what? Even if RFK or Jesse are not your top of mind when it comes to who should be running the country right now, I guarantee you there eventually will be more people who will say combined that if it's Trump or Biden, or quite frankly, as despicable as the Democratic Party is, whoever they're going to put up there, and we're pretty sure it's Gavin Newsom if it ultimately comes to pass, there is no question that this country needs not a little shakeup, a generational change of a shakeup right now.
I support just the breaking of the duopoly. So the mere fact that these are candidates, and again, I can keep saying this, we don't have to agree with the president on all of their issues. We really don't. We really don't. We just need to have people that are reasonable and will listen to other smart people and use good judgment. And sometimes you're not going to be happy with their decisions, and sometimes you will. That's life of an executive.
Ray, you would be right if it isn't, and if it's an outlier. The polling shows consistently that RFK is around 20%.
Yeah.
That means that he only in the next year, which, let's be honest, who the hell knows what's going to happen with Trump legally or Biden cognitively? We are in a situation right now where you really think it's that difficult that somebody like RFK, especially if you had somebody like Jesse Ventura as his running mate, that he can't clear another 10 to 12 points? Of course he can.
Yeah.
That's not even a question. And then it's a matter of which states are actually the ones that are most likely to move. The best thing that could happen right now is that Biden stays as the nominee, because he is a lame duck president if I've ever seen one.
He's just
lame.
And now he's just lame.
Hence the name lame duck. And so, it is going to be interesting to see how this goes.
It's kind of mean about ducks. Like, why do we have to use waterfowl to describe slothy people?
Well, you've even said that there's some ducks, especially down here, which are not very friendly.
Oh no, the Muscovy ducks are nasty little buggers. They're not nice at all.
If you believe in what we stand for, which is transforming politics into service, go to Cash App, $GenChange. Any amount you can contribute is obviously tremendously appreciated. Of course, if you would be so kind as to go over to patreon.com/generational change for as little as $5 a month.
So listen,
become a supporter.
So listen to we've had like a handful of new supporters.
We have.
And patrons, and we're so appreciative.
A Christine and a Christina.
Yes. And some people just opt out of receiving any benefits by mail, which is so sweet of you. I appreciate it, but I truly do not mind sending out a little thank you card with a sticker. So that's basically what I've been noticing. We've had a nice increase in Patrons, which is really helpful since we're demonetized.
It means a lot, guys.
And plus, even if we were monetized, there's just something better about not letting Google take a piece of the money.
Yes.
Just amongst all of us, right? Like, we would all rather not have Google be getting a cut.
So Christine Holm, Christina Swuzo, thank you so much, and Jason Raleigh, $10. We really
he's been a while. We've been very remiss in running our banners. We're going to be running them again, and we've had in the past. Show it. No, let me just see it. No, put it down. In the past few weeks, after Teresa, because Teresa is a patron, Nancy Bernard, Mark J, Deborah Grossback, Curious 49. All of those are new.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Thank you, guys. It really does matter. And we want to be able to compensate our two producers. It really makes a difference.
It does.
We're trying the best we can to run any type of a successful show right now. By
the way, my jersey finally came.
I look forward to seeing it.
We're going to need to have an unveiling. We're going to need to have an unveiling of my new number.
Listen, as a Giants fan, my season's over.
Okay, mine is not. Mine is happy now, even though last night was.
Jen's mine Dolphins. Unfortunately, the Dolphins, in my opinion, really blew a golden opportunity against the Chiefs.
Here's the bottom line: they haven't beaten a team that's better than them yet. That's the truth. They haven't. The teams that they've lost to are better than them, and that's fine. I'm good. We have a team. We have a team, and we have a coach. And for people from Miami, that's a big deal. Like, we have not had a coach.
I agree.
Like, for more than one season in a row in like 20 years. So the fact that we have a coach and a team is very exciting.
On the upward swing.
And I have adopted a New Jersey number for the first time since Dan Marino. So
big deal.
It is a big deal to unveil a number. You don't know yet who it is, do you? See, he doesn't know which jersey it is. I don't know. I think you'll be surprised.
Waddle the Dolphin.
I think you'll be surprised. But so we should have like a guess. We should have like a contest to see who could guess what number I'm going to come in wearing.
You're wearing a Ray Finkel jersey.
So guys, I mean, look, when I was little, I was 22. I was number 22 until there was Dan Marino, and then I was number 13 until now. And I will be unveiling my new number. So we should maybe have a contest, see if anybody can guess. Not that anybody watches the Dolphins, who my new number is.
You don't know that.
I don't know that. You're right. Like, guys, you could put like who my new number is going to be. And I won't even say offense or defense. And I have not as of yet had a defensive number, but I do like that Van Ginkel. He's like Thor.
That's kind of the giveaway.
He's like, no, but it isn't. I don't have, it isn't that, or I wouldn't have said that.
Very good player. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things that we ask you to do. We appreciate each and every one of you. The chat has been extremely lively. Travers, Carne, Teresa, Alan, Notary. Yes, Lace is out. You don't like my music. Ronwell, great to see you.
Ray J,
of course. We have a very unique, eclectic mix.
Metal's going to be upset he missed it.
Metal will definitely be upset. Henry Kajawa, great to see you. DJ, appreciate you. All of you guys. This is what makes the show possible. And of course, Carla Harrington, one of our most amazing supporters. We are grateful that you're all here.
So something I'm thinking about doing now that we're getting Patreon patrons, people, is doing patron only lives that might just be Q&As. And I'm fine doing that. Like, but it would have to be, and I'll have to ask Colin, he probably knows how to do this, but there's a few different ways you can do it, but it would be through Patreon. But that's kind of what I was thinking of doing.
We'll keep that in mind. Smash it.
Does anybody want to like hang out with me online for a bit and ask questions and have a chit chat?
I wouldn't, so she'll have to get some of the people.
I know he doesn't want to talk to me.
I got to get back to work. We'll see you Thursday.